You know that feeling, right? That pit in your stomach when the mail arrives or when you see an unknown number pop up on your phone? We just call it debt. But, back in ancient Babylon, they had a much more brutal word for it: slavery. So how did they get out of it? Well, let's dig into an incredible ancient story that, believe it or not, has a seriously modern plan for breaking free.
And it all kicks off with this really tough question. A question that kind of forces you to look yourself in the mirror and decide what you're made of. Because according to this ancient tale, the answer to this one question is what determines whether you stay broke forever or finally fight your way out.
All right, so let's meet our guy, Dabasir. Now, he wasn't born a slave, not at all. He was actually a really skilled craftsman who, choice by choice, ended up forging his very own chains.
Dabasir's story is probably one we've all seen before, maybe even lived a little. He was great at his job, making saddles, but he wanted all the perks of success way before he'd actually put in the work. He wanted to look rich, so he started spending money he just didn't have on these fancy robes and expensive jewelry for his wife. Basically, he was living a lifestyle funded by a tomorrow that hadn't happened yet.
And looking back on it all, Dabasir himself said it best with this quote. He realized he wasn't just, overspending. He was actively sowing the winds of his own bad habits, knowing deep down that a storm of trouble was absolutely going to hit him. So, when that whirlwind finally touched down, what did he do? He did what so many of us do. He fell right into the first stage of the debt trap, complete avoidance. Instead of manning up and facing the people he owed, he ran. He just packed up and left his wife, his city, all his responsibilities, telling himself he was off to find a better fortune. But really, he was just running from himself. And right here, this is where we see the two paths, the two mindsets just split wide open. At this point in his life, Dabasir was living with the soul of a slave. He was blaming everyone else, running from his problems, and just kind of hoping someone would come along and rescue him. But the other path, the path to freedom, that required a total 180-degree turn in his thinking, to the soul of a free man, one who takes ownership and carves his own way forward.
So Dabasir's big escape plan? It didn't exactly lead to riches. Nope, it led him to joining a gang of robbers, getting captured, and then being sold as a literal slave in the Syrian desert. He had officially hit rock bottom. I mean, you can't get much lower than that.
But here's the thing. Sometimes your luck turns in the strangest of places. Out there in all that heat and dust, he gets put to work for Sira, the chief's wife. And she's sharp. She immediately notices something different about Dabasir. He's not like the others. She can see the shadow of a free man still in there somewhere, and she decides to poke at it.
So one day she just straight up confronts him. Dabasir is making excuses, saying, "But I was born a free man." And that's when Sira hits him with this absolutely devastating question. It just slices right through all of his excuses. She's not talking about the physical chains on his ankles. She's talking about the prison he built for himself out of his own weakness.
Her challenge actually works. It stings him. And Dabasir insists, "No, I do have the soul of a free man." So Sira, she calls his bluff. She gives him a chance, a real chance to prove it. She tells him, "Okay, take 2 of my best camels and escape. Go on. Get back across that desert."
But this escape, it's a total nightmare. He gets lost almost immediately, he runs out of water, and he eventually just collapses under the blistering sun. He's about to die. And right there, with absolutely no one else to blame and nowhere left to run, he faces the final, ultimate choice. Give in to that slave soul and just die in the sand, or dig deep and find the free man's will to live.
And this is the moment everything changes. Lying there, on the brink of death, he doesn't curse the people he owes money to. He has this massive epiphany. They were never the problem. They were friends, people who had trusted him with their money, and he was the one who betrayed that trust. This single act of taking total 100% ownership ignites a fire in him. His new mantra just becomes, "I will live, I will get back, and I will pay back every single one of them."
And that sheer determination, it's what saves him. He somehow survives the desert and actually makes it all the way back to Babylon. But now, of course, comes the really hard part. How does a guy with absolutely nothing pay off a mountain of debt? Well, he comes up with a plan. A really simple but incredibly powerful plan he calls the 10-20-70 rule.
So here it is, the 10-20-70 rule. It's just a simple 3-part split for every single coin that came into his hands. And this became the blueprint for his entire financial comeback. It wasn't about some get-rich-quick scheme. It was all about a systematic, disciplined plan.
Okay, so what made this plan work was its simplicity. Check it out. Step 1. He and his wife agreed to live on just 70% of their income. That's it. No frills, no fancy stuff. Step 2. A full 20% of everything he earned was divided up and paid to his creditors every single month. And Step 3, the final 10%, he kept for himself.
Now, I know what you're thinking. That last part sounds totally nuts, right? Why wouldn't you just throw all 30% at the debt and get it done faster? It's because Basir understood human psychology. He knew that if every single ounce of his hard work went only to paying for old mistakes, he'd get bitter and quit. He needed to hear the jingle of his own coin again. He needed to feel like he was building a new future, not just trying to erase the past. That 10%, that was pure fuel for his soul.
And this is where it all pays off, where that raw determination finally found its way. Basir didn't just cross his fingers and hope for the best. He stuck to his plan with this incredible commitment, month after month, and year after year. And the results were just life-changing. Slowly but surely, every single one of his debts was paid off in full. But get this, that little 10% he was saving for himself, it grew into a small fortune of its own. That massive weight on his shoulders just lifted, and for the first time in years, he could walk through the streets of Babylon with his head held high. He'd earned back his self-respect.
But this, right here, is the most powerful part of the whole story. The very same men who used to hunt him down, cursing his name, they saw what he was doing. They saw his determination, they saw him honoring his word, and his integrity turned his worst enemies into his biggest supporters. They saw the soul of a free man, and you know what? They wanted to do business with that man.
So, what do we take away from this ancient story today? It really boils down to this simple, timeless truth. Basir's journey isn't just about a budget. It's about the unstoppable force of sheer determination. Once he truly decided he had the soul of a free man, the plan was just a tool. The real power was his will to see it through. So the final question isn't about his story, it's about yours. Where there's determination, a way can be found. What way will you find?